Okay, go ahead, Mr.
So
Lawrence.
then I move that we open the continued public hearing for the MBTA zoning bylaw amendments.
We
Second.
have a motion, we have a second, any discussion? A lot of roll call votes tonight. Mr. Boissy,
Aye.
Mr. English,
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence,
Aye.
Mr. Maloney,
Aye.
Mr. Orban,
Aye.
Mr. Woodhams,
Aye.
Mike McKnight, aye, 7 in favor, no one opposed, motion carries. So we had another subcommittee meeting last week. I think we made some more headway. We went through all of the different sites that we had identified areas, and we had brought that to the board of quadrants where we wanted to look at sites. We took the next step of looking in those quadrants at specific sites to consider for overlay district. Some we approved, some we took out, and some we had questions on. I think it would be good, Rachel, if we could bring up maybe mine has some notes on it that will jog our memory. The PowerPoint that I had sent out, we can look at that just on the different sites, and then we can bring the board members up to speed on the discussion of each one of those sites.
Sure. Give me a minute to find the email and I will share it.
If I knew how, I would, because I have it, but
Here we go. Okay, let's see if this works. And share.
perfect. All right. So this was updated. I think some of you think you saw this from our last meeting. If we go to page 2. And please, Mr. Woodhams, Rachel, and Mr. Lawrence, help with the discussion. If we got something wrong here, you want to add commentary to the discussion because we spent a couple hours on these different parcels. So we had these are sites within the quadrants. This particular one is the Franklin Town Line up off of Route 140. The sites that we had talked about was on the, I think, the south side of 140. If I'm not mistaken, it's on the Franklin Country Club side. We had just identified it as an area. Whoops. But we found 3 different sites within that, and the questions came up around site number 1, where it is 233 acres. Can we overlay only part of that? We don't have the answer to that because that could be one of the 25-acre sites. We actually have a meeting on the 27th with the state to help answer that question. That's where the gravel pit is, or a large part of the gravel pit is on that site. The other one was site 2. So site 2 is small on the left, but we put it in the middle in a block. I think we said that was worth considering. There was some discussion around access roads to it, whether you could actually get to it, because part of the pit is there. But can you actually get to it? And then the question was, does that even under our purview to care whether they can get to it or not? But that is 68 acres. So it falls into that same question of, can you overlay part of a site and not the entire site? And then the third parcel is the one that's X'd out, which is closest to the lake, closest to the residences. I believe that's a forested 33 acres. And we said that is not one we'd want to put under consideration for all the reasons why we talked about not being near the lake and maybe disturbing, what is already a very sensitive area. Mr. Woodhams, Mr. Lawrence, or Rachel, anything on those? Anything else on that side of the street of 140 that I might have missed?
No, I think
we have questions for that meeting that's going to be upcoming. You're going to have a question and answer session with someone at the state office that is advising people on this process, right?
Right. If we find we can take a 233 acre or a 68 acre and take 25 of that and overlay, then those two sites, number 1 and 2, could be prime for that 25 acres, or maybe we decide it's prime for the whole thing. But that would put all 750 units in one part of town. So I think we still wanted to spread that out.
Well, we also, I think you were gonna ask them about, there's language in their approvals of access and frontage. And so I think one of the questions you need to ask in that meeting is what's necessary for access and frontage if we were looking at lots like these?
Lot 2 has neither.
Yeah, lot 2 has
Technically.
neither, and
Right.
lot 1 does seem to have quite a bit of frontage, which could be access. So,
That's a great point. Thank you for reading that up. Lot 2 appears to be landlocked, although it's owned by the same owner. That doesn't appear there's any road network out there, so that might be part of that problem.
there's certainly no town road there upon which it would have frontage, right? So, there may be paths that they're running the trucks around the pit, but that's different from a road that you would have frontage on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that covers it for those 3.
So then we went to the other side of the street, across from Franklin Country Club, right on the line. There is a site, 896 Franklin Street, 26 acres, although net after wetlands, we think it's about 17 acres. We had Leo Inneman in the meeting, and he described some issues around this site. Apparently it's been excavated, and the excavation and the grade today is below the wetlands level. And we'd have to probably do some more investigating on that to see if the net 17 that's outside of the wetlands can actually be used. It might be a site where we could use it for 5 acres or something, one of the smaller parcels. Potentially it is a commercial zone. So we would lose some tax revenue if we chose to do that. But that was the commercial zone up on the other side of 140. And the other one that we batted around was 30 Industrial Road. Some version of, there's 18 acres, there could be 25 if you bring those yellow lines down to 140. It's developed. We had discussions about trying to stay away from the 40B overlay that's of the houses that are already over there, so we don't lose credit on the 40Bs. I think that is another question that we just need to validate with the state, that if we overlay this zone on a 40B, that could be a problem. So this one wasn't as clear, although again, it's in that quadrant of town, and maybe it makes sense to do something in this area. Further investigation, and I think Rachel is working on kind of extending the yellow box you see in that bottom right corner to include the properties down to 140 and out to Industrial Way. Is that what it is?
Industrial Road, yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I was waiting for you to do that, but if you would like me to do that, I can.
Okay. Other discussion was doing the overlay on the development that's up there without taking into consideration the 40B. And I think a question really comes, and I don't know if we have the answers to it, as to what the state says about overlaying on top of already developed parcels. And I think we can, so that might be another consideration. But
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
Arlington did, Norwood did, Dedham did, Canton did. Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe all of those are, and I'm not sure they're separate rules, but I believe all of those are MBTA communities as opposed to MBTA adjacent, and I don't know if it matters. But
I think
I
Rachel
haven't
has
heard
the answer to that.
In my reading of the letters, I didn't see anything that it did matter.
Because
But
they are commuter communities. They are obligated to put their overlay within 0.5 miles of the nearest station. So If
Got it.
everything they have that's within 0.5 is developed, then that's their
That's
only
how it
option.
goes.
Okay, got it.
We are not bound by that, but therefore we are
But it appears
also
to be an
not able,
option,
not able,
possibly.
it's not as clear for us. My only concern with doing it over the 40B is losing the credit for the 40B, because if we're gonna do that, then
Right.
I don't think it's a good idea, but
Question would become up if we have the option to do it and we overlay it on everything but the 40B that's already been built out, could that be an option? So we don't lose the credit on 40B, but we put it on something else. Is that our option to do? Or those are the sites up in the corner by 140. We can go through them all, or we can talk individually if you'd like to hear, because I think it's interesting when you get to the other ones too, and we can come back and kind of consolidate our thoughts on what are the best options. My guess is Mr. Lawrence is going to ask for a straw vote on on the top 3 25-acre parcels, like you did with Chuck and I. And
Well, it worked the first time,
It
so,
did.
you know, we'll see if
it
we
did.
can do it.
It did. Why don't we flip, Rachel, to the second page? So this is the Foxborough town line, closest to the Foxborough town line, up around 140 and Route 1. We had considered 69 acres of land between, essentially, I think it's 140. Coming off of 140, it does not get out to Route 1. But I believe the comments here, the reason we took it off was it's 69 pretty pristine acres of land that to make this the overlay district, we didn't feel was the right parcel to do it with. So the one we did feel better about was the site where the solar farm is. That's in the second block, 28 acres, of which, if we overlaid that, would have access to Route 1 and the T station up at Gillette Stadium. I'll
That'll
stop
be in
there.
the straw poll.
Yeah, that would that keep your eye on that one. Any questions about excluding, I guess, first the 69 acres of I think it's pretty virgin land up there. Okay. The other parcels on Route 1 are 2 parcels a bit further down across from the pond that apparently we could combine, and there's a total of something in the order of 7-ish acres. So lot 1 and lot 2. I believe they have some challenges on the site with, I'm not sure if they're junkyards or dumps or what, but if we did those, we might be able to get those sites cleaned up if this was one of the smaller parcels of the remaining 25 acres that we come up with. I brought back up and took out as fast as I brought it up the commercial zone down at 140 and Route 1, or down at Madison and Route 1. It's a commercial zone. And my two compadres on the committee said, nope, we're not doing those. So pull it back out. So I'm fine with that. And we took it back out. All right, Rachel, if you could flip to the next page. Then we went down to the Plainville line on 1A. The discussion around this had quite a bit of discussion, because if we have the right information, it might end up to be a consideration for the 25 acres. Although the initial view of this was, I believe, the Armitage project land. And I might have this labeled wrong, Rachel, so help correct me if you would. I don't think these are the same address sites as noted, but there is roughly 20 acres plus, of which maybe Mr. Williams, you can describe. I think you know these sites pretty well. What's going on with these?
Well, I'm not sure I'd say I know them well, but at least the first two parcels that are on South Street, parcels 1 and 4, were the site of a former auto salvage yard, long since closed up. So I'm sure there's some site cleanup that would have to be done there. The parcel that's on Berry Street is, although it's labeled Armitage, I believe is under different ownership. And that, yeah, that one that's 13.5. Yeah, that's Mr. Jim Goshen. That one, I think I'm not really that familiar with that piece of property. The two Armitage parcels, like I said, that was growing up, that was an auto salvage yard that's no longer in use, but I'm sure there's some cleanup that could be done there. With your indulgence, Mr. Chair, if I could ask Rachel, I had asked in an email, I don't know if I got an answer. Parcel 4, what is that sort of cul-de-sac looking thing that's immediately to the south of it? Is that a road? Is that a paper road? Is that a driveway?
Rose Street, is that what you're talking about?
No, Rose Lane is up. Rose
Oh,
Drive is
the thing that
Rose
ends
Drive
on the
runs.
8? The thing that ends on the 8?
Mm,
Is
You
that a
have parcel
driveway?
1, you have parcel 4. And then there's like a road that comes in from South Street that ends in a,
That's it.
is
half
that
cul-de-sac.
yeah, right, that. Is that a driveway? Is that a road?
I think at your subcommittee meeting, or one of your other meetings, I had said that if this is, I believe it's Rose Drive or Rose Lane, I have to look in to see what the subdivision approval was on this, if it was a subdivision, paper road, as you're talking about. That's something that I would have to do some research into, or whatever
Okay,
this.
'cause
I think
'cause-
this is mislabeled in GIS.
Okay, that was what was
Yeah.
messing me up, because I thought you had originally said that was Rose Drive, and then I saw the Rose Drive on the GIS. So if that is Rose Drive and that is an existing paper road, does that count as frontage? Is my question. Even though the road doesn't exist physically, if it was if it was a paper road, would that be counted as
sure
frontage,
seemed like it ought to.
is parcel 4 essentially landlocked?
I would assume, I'm adding it to the list of questions to the state, but I would assume that as it with anybody that would develop a paper road, if they wanted to further develop it, they would have to bring it up to current standards and not, provide adequate access.
Right, but for the sake of the requirements that the state is making sure that we have, that we choose parcels that are accessible and have frontage.
Well, frontage and
If-
accessible are two different things. This
Okay.
has frontage. Or not, site 4 has frontage on this road here.
Right, that was my question. So
But let
I'm
me just confirm that, because I've found in the GIS things that were called out as roads that actually aren't roads. So
okay,
let me just confirm that.
because my only thought was considering maybe parcel 4 and not parcel 1 as a possibility. That's all, instead of combining the two of them into 20. Leaving parcel 1 as commercial, it's got access right on Route 1A, and if this can be considered to have frontage on what we think is Rose Drive, if that would satisfy the requirements of the state. And then if that is considered to have access to a paper road, then if someone wants to build the houses there, they build the road too. I think that's a reasonable thing to expect. Anyway, they're going to have to build roadways. But it would just be, my only question would be whether that would cause a problem with state acceptance of it. That's all. Okay.
So that's the review. I think we'll go backwards. I think trying to combine 3 lots, number 1, number 4, and the other one that has access to the back road seems like a stretch. So I guess I would throw this out that this is probably not considered a 25-acre option, or at the high end of it's going to make it to a 25-acre option. So we would probably put these two, and this is conversation, put these two in the smaller parcel, maybe number 1 or number 4, as 20 acres in 2 different parcels that could be developed, either one or both, as part of our remaining 25 acres. Would you agree that, Mr. Woodhams, Mr. Lawrence, because we went through this, that trying to combine all 3 of these into a 25 isn't probably feasible?
I don't know. No, wouldn't agree with that. I don't know why you say that. I mean, they're contiguous. There's a paper road right out in the middle of the space.
So you'd include
4, 5, and 1. Is that what we're talking about? No, oh, I'm sorry. Number 10, down here on the right, that we decided wouldn't work.
right.
But 4, 5, and 1 together. Because we're
4.
looking at 5 as well, which we don't have outlined here.
Okay.
Yeah, that one.
We didn't do 5 as acreage. I'm not sure does that get us to 25?
I believe it does, because we're
Okay.
at 20, and just by eyeballing it, I'd say it definitely does.
Okay, so
So it's possible if we decide that's what we want to do. Otherwise, it does, as you're saying, it could be a good candidate for some of one or more of the smaller sections.
we're gonna have a vote on this, and so we'll start with the 25 acres. This is not my idea, this is Mr. Lawrence's, but we could consider this as parcel 1, 4, and 5 as an option for a 25 acre. That's option number 1. Why don't we put that as option number 1? Plainville Town Line, 4, 5, and 1, question mark. If you back up 1 page, Rachel, please. The option for a 25 acre is 80 Washington Street.
Mr. Chairman,
And yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I know you covered this already. I was writing. Just, could you just explain again the advantage of 80 Washington over 856 East Street, please?
Sure. I'll give you my version, but I'd love Mr. Woodham and Mr. Lawrence to chime in. I believe what we said was, without a Route 1 connector, we're putting traffic on 140. That's one comment. We have this 69 acres, which is wooded and fairly pristine, and to take down that and create well, we're talking about 15 units an acre. 25 acres is 375 units of housing. Again, we'd have to get approval either to zone the whole thing, which then you could put all 50 acres under, or for an overlay of only 25 acres. So we didn't think it was a viable site from that perspective because of where it's located and I don't know, I'd call it the beauty of it, or the pristine, but maybe Mr. Woodhams or Lawrence could annotate those answers or give their own version.
Go ahead, Chuck.
I think my concern with it is, until we know whether this state will accept us overlaying part of a parcel, you've got a singular parcel that's almost 70 acres. And if we can't say, okay, you can put 25 of this aside for MBTA style high density housing and keep the rest of it as the underlying zoning, which I believe is R43. You're then taking the risk that you're going to have to allow them all or nothing, and be able to put the high density housing on the entire single parcel of land. If it were multiple parcels and you could do part of it, I think it would be fine, but the problem is until we know whether the state will allow us to only overlay part of it, we're taking the risk that 70 acres could potentially be. Because the state is saying we have to have 50 acres. State is not saying we only have to have 50 acres. Some towns have adopted more. And we could, in fact, put ourselves, unforeseen circumstances. Or, hopefully we're foreseeing them. That potentially this entire thing could be built at that 15 units per acre, and we wouldn't be able to prevent that if they're allowed to do the entire thing. And now we're talking far more than 750 units. So I think the only time I would want to consider that would be if we actually got the word from the state that we could overlay part of it. Even then, it would still not be my first choice, but it would be a lot more palatable to me than the whole thing.
Anything to add, Mr. Lawrence?
Yeah, and the other thing I think we thought of is, well, if we're overlaying like the front 25 acres of it, okay, so now we're landlocking the back 25, or, well, I guess it's all the way up that access road to Route 1, so there's a whole necessarily a problem. Yeah, no, I don't have anything else to add, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So
I don't-
80, oops, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, I don't think that would landlock it because they have access off of Foxborough, or that's actually East Street that goes up to Route 1 at that point. East Street does a 45-degree turn. But even if you did the front 25 as the MBTA, they could still have an access road through that to the back part of it that could be developed as single-family houses. So it's not really landlocking it.
Good, okay.
So on this, we had said pretty easy, 28 acres, 80 Washington Street was kind of the one. So we have two 25-acre options now on the table. If we go to the previous page, the first page of this. Without knowing exactly what Mr. Woodham's just said, can we overlay? I think we like the fact that number one has plenty of land and is kind of set back and all that. But I think we focused our attention until we get that answer on 30 Industrial Road, I think was where we landed. But questions have to be answered around the overlays. And maybe something on 896 Franklin Street around, you can't take the full 25 acres out of 26 because it's only 17 net usable. So if we included the lots adjacent to 140 on the bottom right plan, that would be 25 acres of land to be considered, or some reconfiguration of that within that quadrant of either homes built without the 40B or this site here. I believe this. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I think we did to just get over 25, we did those 3 big lots along 140, and then that other small lot, you could just add it in to make it one chunk. But that gets us to like 27. So I'm sorry. So go ahead. You were.
Yep. No, I was going to say, we'll have the answer on the 27th on the overlay, and maybe that creates more discussion around the number one site as the better option that could be built over a longer period of time because it's already under being excavated, and maybe that puts off some of this stress on the town and does what we had said in the guiding principles to kind of stretch some of this stuff out, so it's not all 750 acres aren't built in the next 3 years. So those are the 3 sites. I guess the way we could do this is to say, whose first option? Let's start with 30 Industrial Road, because that's where we are. Who would feel that 30 Industrial Road would be your first option of the 3? And I can't see all the, yes.
I was just gonna say, before we go, Rachel, did you have something you wanted to add?
I did, if the chairman will allow.
Go ahead.
I did send out an email back in October of 2023 to our town council asking if what would happen to the 40B, the comprehensive permit, if we put the MBTA overlay over there. My question, I will read verbatim. Lisa, if we change the zoning underlying or overlay of an existing 40B development to allow multifamily by right, could that 40B development fall off our SHI? SHI is subsidized housing inventory. Or only if they did a complete redevelopment? What if they came in for a modification of the permit? Is this something that would be mentioned in the comprehensive permit? Want to make sure there are no unintended consequences with putting an MBTA zone on one of the 40B parcels. Her answer, the 40B is secured by a regulatory agreement, or should be, that controls the parcel. Unless that regulatory agreement is released or removed, those units will always count towards the SHI. Any 40B owner can come in for a modification, but not to release it from the requirements of the regulatory agreement. That would take the town and DHCD, now EO HLC, agreeing to the release. That is highly unlikely. So you could put the MBTA overlay on that parcel, but the regulatory agreement and comprehensive permit would control.
Okay. Mr. Boissy, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just one question. If a development occurs off a street that is like a country road that really isn't up to the task of taking the amount of traffic a large development would have, is there anything that would force the developer to improve the road? Like, if, let's say it ends up off Elysium Street and there's, lots of traffic on that road now and they really can't handle that traffic. I'm just trying to understand if there would be anything that would improve the road to support the traffic, or
I think we still have site plan approval and things like traffic and drainage and oversight. I think we still have the planning board would be able to manage that. Could they put, if we put the overlay there, could they ignore all the traffic that they would add? I don't believe they can. I think we still have the right to do proper planning, even though, and Rachel, you can chime in, but I don't think anybody could go and build 375 units and not take into consideration the size of roads, the width of roads, the intersections that they're going to feed into.
Correct.
okay.
Article 7 in the zoning bylaw, chapter 390, 7.7, section B of that, criteria for site plan approval. There are a number of items in there that the applicant has to provide in order to prove that they meet adequate stormwater. A couple of them are provision of adequate access to the site for public safety vehicles, minimizing pedestrian vehicular safety, maximizing pedestrian vehicular safety within the site and between the site and adjoining ways. And there's a number of other items. I can send you the link to that section so you have it and you can review.
Okay, thank you. It also applied to the other road, Rose Drive.
Rose Lane,
Okay.
yeah,
Rose Lane, thank you.
whatever it is. I think it is Rose Drive.
Okay, no, that's a good question. What we're trying to do is get directionally where we think we should focus the 25-acre parcel so that Rachel can go do the work she needs to do, and then and put it in order of these are the three options, and here's the one we want first, second, and third. And then we'll go to the smaller sites and I think do the same thing so that we can start to, we've now looked at, we've blown out what Rachel's done. We've looked at more sites. We've come back. We've got the guiding principles. We've got the quadrants we're looking at. We're down to sites. And how do we get more focus so that Rachel can start to do her work on do these sites meet, if you put it into the model, meet the guidelines. Rachel? Your
So
hands
it's
up?
not just, yes, I do.
Yeah.
I was just gonna comment on, it's, also, if you're coming up with 5 or 6 or 10, I'm not trying to be facetious, or sarcastic.
3.
Depending on how many sub-districts you come up with. Each one of those sub-districts, you're going to essentially have to come up with different types of setbacks, dimensional requirements. And those items also get fed into that spreadsheet. And those are what determine what the ultimate what is it there? The developability. And then when you combine them all together, whether it's the 50 acres and 15 units per acre, 750. So it's not just keeping, selecting the sites. If you would like, I can just put in whatever the underlying zoning dimensional requirements are for them. But these are all going to be separate sub-districts and should be treated as such. Each has a different a feel or character. They're in a different character of a neighborhood. And you would, as planning, you would want to try and have the dimensional requirements show that, reflect that.
I mean, for ease, we could start with the underlying zoning setbacks and then if we narrowed this down, you said, hey, we picked three sites, we order them, the top one you wanted doesn't work, the second one does, then maybe we focus our attention on, let's look at that more closely, but start with the underlying zoning as the basis so that we don't have to run you through multiple iterations of that. Maybe just by a show of hands as we go through this, we talked about 30 Industrial Road as an option for the 21 of the 25 acres. If this is, and we're going to go top priority, second priority, third priority. If this is your top priority, if you could raise your hand. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay.
Everybody.
We have 7. If we flip Rachel to 80 Washington Street on Route 1 on the north side, this is the L-shaped. How many people would put that as their next option versus lots 2, 4, 4, 5, and 1 down on Route 1A by Plainville? I would put it up there.
Oh, I would. This would be my second option. Yeah.
4.
Question about this one, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I heard the explanation. Actually, I accept it, but this is commercially zoned at the moment, right? Does it have the potential for yielding quite a bit more tax revenue for the town as commercial property? I know you said there's an application for a solar farm there, right?
It's an approval for a solar farm, and it's been challenged by Concom and been not overturned, but the approval still stays. So that's the development that's potentially going to go in there.
Okay. Thank you.
I
Just
counted
to be
4.
clear, I lowered my hand on that one.
Okay.
I don't know if you counted me or not, but
Let's go back to 80 Washington Street as the next priority. We had 4, maybe we have 3. 1.
No, I'm sorry. That's
3,
my second.
4. We have 4. And if we go to the lots down off of 1A in the south, Rachel, that would be the ones we just talked about. So it's lots 1, 4, and 5 as
So the
your
question
next
is, for
priority.
whom would this be your second choice?
Who would this be your second choice? 2? 2. So it looks like 30 Washington Street, and then 80 Washington, and then these parcels down here.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that
when
should
you're
help.
done, I'd like to continue on a slightly different aspect of this topic.
Are you still talking about the 25 acres, or because I was going to move on to the secondary sites?
That's what I was going to talk about. Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Why don't we start with this then? If we only have 2, that's a primary. Who would view these sites, the 8 acres and or the 12 acres, as part of the remaining 25 acres as a priority? I would actually do that. So,
I'm sorry, so,
I,
so, so we,
So-
it's 30 Industrial Road and 80 Washington Street for the 25 acres. So now the question is, we're looking at smaller parcels.
we have another 25 acres to cure, of which we can go down as small as 5-acre parcels
Okay,
or as much as another 25. But I think we're saying, let's try to get to 25 with some sites. And I'm just trying to sort here who likes what smaller sites, and then we can add them up and see if they come up into 25, if they add up to 25 acres.
all right.
So we'll take them. Let's see. I guess 4, 5, and 1 could be taken independently.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
maybe we could just go down the board and let each member express, based on what they've heard, their idea. Because I think we know what I think you and I and Chuck each know what each other's ideas are. I'd like to hear from the other
Okay.
board members, without our prejudices, Oh,
Do you want the
Okay.
map though to see where the smaller parcels
I
are?
don't know.
so we can-
Let's see where the members are at.
Okay, so we need to come up with other sites as small as 5 acres that total up to 25 acres, and it can be any increment above 5 acres. And so you've seen the different sites, the smaller sites, and I don't know if you need the map to refresh your memory on what those smaller sites are, but that's what we're trying to say is, where do you want to put the other smaller sites? So,
Okay,
Mr. Boassi, we'll start with you.
Okay. I'm good with either Franklin Town Line area or the Plainville Town Line areas, the primary and secondary sites. And I have concerns about Route 1 Washington Street. Just don't think it's a good place for housing. And I definitely don't like the idea of buses going there. I mean, if it was adjacent to another street, that would help with the buses. But parents are not going to want their kids getting picked up by a bus going up Route 1 and on a daily basis twice a day. I also think the Foxborough, I think the Patriots Place station, is that open like all the time or now? Okay, it used to be just sometimes. But either way, I
I know
don't.
differently, but I understand it's a full-time station right now.
Oh, really? I mean, maybe Route 1 will change over time and be better for something like this, but at least the way it is now, I don't think it's a great spot for housing at all. And I think the master plan we have now, that's why it's zoned for commercial all along Route 1, but that's just, that's my
So
opinion.
some number of parcels on the Franklin or Plainville town line that we can pick and get to
Yeah.
25 acres.
If we
Okay.
have to do something on Washington Street, I would appreciate at least minimizing it, but, if we can come to an agreement that way. But
Okay,
that's my opinion.
Mr. English.
You're on mute, Rob. Good stuff,
Thank
though.
Sorry, hard to
Yes.
hear if I'm muted. It's tough trying to cob together small sites. So I'm looking at 1143 South Street and the Armitage site, which is somewhere in the range of 20 acres. There's no clarity on the road there and whether that's an accepted road, a town road, or what exactly it is. So I don't know. I'm not crazy about Washington Street, mostly for the reasons that Mr. Boassi verbalized. And I think it kind of isolates people. It certainly provides great access, but I don't know that section of road all that well to say, yeah, it's okay to go in and out there. So,
Okay,
yeah, Plainville line is where I'm leaning.
so you've got a Plainville line. Mr. Boassi, if you had to choose between Franklin line and Plainville line, do you have a preference?
Maybe
maybe-
maybe slight to Franklin, but either way, I think could work well. Like depending on what you have to go through into the details. So I guess slight preference to Franklin, but either way, it's fine with me, really.
And maybe at the end of the day, we end up with 12 acres on Franklin line and 12 acres or 12 and a half down on, but that's an option. So, okay. Mr. Maloney.
Well, I think I agree with my colleagues, Mr. Chairman. Route 1 is supposed to be our commercial corridor. And so I'm a little reluctant to put housing out there. But the site you're looking at on 80 Washington is already committed to an enterprise today, isn't the solar farm? Is that right? Or
It is, but doesn't prevent us from putting an overlay. And if the solar, at some point, somebody wants to buy it and it goes away, it could be developed for something else.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess that would be okay. Down on the Plainville end, is that all zoned industrial as well? The sites we're looking at down there?
Rachel, do you know that?
Yes, majority of 2 out of the 3 that you've picked, I believe. Actually, 3 out of the 3 are all. The rear, 1143 rear is split zoned, so the back half is actually R87.
Okay. I guess I'll go along with my 2 colleagues on this with an edge toward Franklin, the Franklin line assembly, and move on from there. I'm open to suggestions on the other 2. I understand the reasoning there. But, I think Alfred and Rob might have been on the right track there with Franklin.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Mr. Orban.
Yeah, I'm generally in line with what we just heard. I'm more open, I think, based on what I'm hearing, to the Plainville ideas. Especially if we're gonna put a bigger lot up on the Franklin line. I don't know if we want to put a bigger one and a small one so close together, because it adds a lot to that one particular area. So I could really go either way, but I think if we're gonna put a big lot in the Franklin area, I'd prefer maybe have one of the smaller lots, so we're a little more split apart.
So more on the Plainville side.
Correct.
Okay. So Mr. Lawrence, you've got some thoughts you might want to share with the board.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, I have no impetus to try to find 5 other 5-acre lots and like really ratchet it down, but I was thinking like 3 8-acre lots, 8 to 10, something in that neighborhood would make it work. I understand, people's feeling about Route 1. I don't share those feelings as much. I think, people who I actually, Mr. Boassi makes a really good point about the school bus, which I had not considered. But I assume they're going to make a development up in there, and the school bus is going to drive up in there and pick up the kids and drive out. So, I don't know how they're gonna work it all out, but I just can't. I don't think it's up to us to. I think we're just trying to find spaces where there's a certain amount of sense, and I understand that between Mr. Maloney's concerns about giving up commercially zoned space and Mr. Boassi's concerns about not being a great environment for families, I can see that that's not ideal. And again, if we can overlay a portion of a lot or something like that, maybe we do put a little something off of East Street up on that 69-acre parcel, and we give 5 acres up there. That's right next to Foxborough. That's got access both to town and right to Route 1, so not all the traffic goes out onto 140 and East Street. I do like the idea of putting 10 acres or so down by Armitage. I just think the access down there to the malls and the highway and everything else argues for that based upon the options we have. And then, yeah, I don't know what they're going to do if we put the remaining stuff up by the pit or in that commercially zoned area that no one can figure out how to build right on the Franklin line. I don't know what that's gonna look like up in the pit area with Elysium Road. I mean, I assume that they're gonna have to consider if they're creating a traffic light right there at Elysium Road with the traffic they're gonna add and all those other things. I mean, aren't they subject to traffic analysis and stuff like that? They have to be. You can
Yep.
possibly plan to put in that many units without being cognizant of traffic impact. So, you know, those are some of my thoughts. But yeah, I think with what we have, we can find some spaces that make sense for the town and give us a little bit of spreading out of all this. And are not so onerous for developers that they feel like they're being abused. So I'm complete.
Okay, Mr. Woodhams, thank you.
Yeah, I think until we get the word from the state as to whether we can overlay portions based on what we have in front of us now, I would be in favor of doing the Franklin Street at the town line as one parcel and some part of the parcels of the Armitage property, which is part of why I would be very curious to find out if that parcel 4 is considered accessible and could that be chosen by itself, because then that still leaves parcel 1, parcel 5, commercial frontage, you know, right on Route 1A. So we don't lose the commercial aspect of that. But parcel 4, you know, it backs up to residential property. It's as Rachel, I think, said, it's split zone, so part of it is already residentially zoned. If we find out that we can use that parcel by itself, that would be my first choice. If without that, then the Franklin Street at the town line and whatever combination of those lots on the Plainville line to get us to the acreage that we need would be my vision of it.
Okay, thank you. I don't have very differing views here. I think we have to understand the overlay and we can refine this. If putting it over part of a parcel is an important answer to, because I'd still like to see something up on Washington Street. And if we do Industrial Way and then we do the Plainville Town Line, we almost have to go back to the Franklin Town Line with the last piece if we leave out the northern side of Route 1 towards Foxborough. So I could see us putting not only the 25 acres on 30 Industrial Road, but then another 8 or 10 acres up in that area again, someplace else. And that to me overloads one corner of town. More than I would like to see. So I'd still like to consider maybe not the ones on Route 1A, those 2 small parcels. But if we got 30 industrial as the 28 5-acre parcel, I'd like to see 80 Washington Street become a part of that lot being an 8 or 10-acre parcel. So we're in 3 corners of the town, I guess would mine. But we can't answer that question until we get the question on partially overlaying this on part of a piece of property. Okay, that's good. Good analysis. I think we're honing in on this. I think we've got one more subcommittee meeting Tuesday that we are scheduling. We'll have the answer Tuesday afternoon or we'll have the meeting with the state before that subcommittee meeting. I think at that subcommittee meeting, our goal will be to refine this, knowing the answers to the questions. And then Mr. Woodhams is chairing the meeting on the 4th. We'll bring that back. And I think at that point, we have to hone it down to give Rachel, look at this, and this, and on the 28 5-acre parcels, and then look at these and in priority of the smaller parcels that add up to 25 so that she can continue to do her work. Rachel, I don't know if you can bring up my second email where I corrected the dates, but I did want to just share with the board some thought process on what we have to do between now and the November town meeting. And I don't know if you fully filled in, Rachel, what you need to do, and does it fit into that? So I'd like to just chat for a minute about the schedule and make sure we're aligned on when we need to have decisions made and what that means from getting before town meeting in November.
Give me a minute to find the email.
I wrote it and then I made some mistakes on some dates, so I sent another one. If we could use the corrected one, that would be really helpful.
Yes, I understand. I'm looking for it now.
It was Sunday, I think, but I might be losing my days here. They're falling into each other.
Mr. Chairman, the next subcommittee meeting is Tuesday, the 27th, did you say?
I believe we are scheduling it for Tuesday, Rachel, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
There you go. Where's my Zoom? There's the Zoom. Share screen.
Ah, yes, all in orange. So we have our planning board meeting tonight. I put here, how much time do you need, Rachel, to run the sites and the models once we refine it? And maybe we'll have that finite list after Tuesday's subcommittee meeting. Planning board meeting on Wednesday to kind of finalize the different sites and come to we may not all
actually be down here.
Okay.
Sure, I'm just asking if how I can't run through sites. Guys may change your mind based on. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just, you guys may, based on that conversation, you may change your mind. So would it be acceptable to you, Chair, to move that to after your subcommittee meeting?
It would. I think that makes sense. I think we're honing in on it. It feels to me like we've got a priority order now, although we don't have the finite. So if it's going to create extra work for you, then let's wait until after the 27th when we can have those answers and come up with here's what we want to look at, and here's the order in which we want to look at it. So we have a backup plan. So that's fine. Rachel and I are meeting with the state on Tuesday to get some answers. If you have any other questions you want to ask the state about this bylaw or things that are happening, please drop us a line and we'll do that. Hopefully we come out of the 27th with a refined version of this, bring that to the 4th meeting, the September 4th, and I would hope that we could be in a position where the board would recommend to Rachel, or she would have information to say, I've heard what the subcommittee was looking at from a priority. I've looked at some of those sites. There's either challenges or they work. And then on the 4th, be in a position to release her to do the rest of her work. The warrant does open on the 9th. The subcommittee is currently being scheduled for the Board of Selectmen meeting on the 17th. And on the 18th, we have a planning board meeting. I guess, Rachel, the question is, with all of that timing, and we need to understand what you need and when you need it firm and final so that we don't run you in circles on changes, so that we have a vote at the latest on the 16th of October, because I think that would present us. We don't have a meeting after that, correct, in October, and then we get into town meeting, which we probably have to have the warrant closes on the 29th. So I think we'd have to have a vote and a proposal being drafted so that the warrant could include it. Is that your understanding, Rachel? And what else are we missing that you need or we need to do to think about from a timing perspective?
So I would strongly suggest as soon as possible, taking a look at the bylaw as I stated at the subcommittee meeting. I did ask, and then follow up in an email. I did ask your town council to recommend some MBTA bylaws, and she did provide those. So I will send those to the subcommittee and the whole board if you would like, Chairman, to
Sure.
review,
Yep.
along with the draft bylaw that was already provided as well, to see what you like, don't like. I think one's from Ashland and the other one is from Newbury that the town council provided. But looking through that, and you can work on some of that stuff prior to even having a site selected. But given how long it's taken in the past to work on some zoning amendments with the group, I would suggest working on that in tandem with the sites as you had suggested. And the dates you have here are acceptable.
Is there anything? So we're saying we have to make a decision or have our package put together for the 16th of October, so it can be on the warrant and can get to the town meeting. Is there anything that, if we run with this schedule, Rachel, that would put you in a bind? And if we made decisions on something sooner than the dates here would help you?
Yes, everything. If any decision that could be made sooner would help.
Okay.
Whether it be something in the bylaw, whether it be a site, anything would help. I
think we've gotten good input from everybody here. After the subcommittee meeting on the 27th, I will not hold up the process and let you and ask you to continue to try to make decisions on this on the 4th without me. But I think we've all kind of noodled through this thing a lot. And now let's get to something on paper that we can work with and Rachel can work with. So please don't hold anything up on my account because I'm not there on the 4th. Keep working through.
Mr. Chair, I have a question on the meeting with the state.
Mhm.
Through you, Mr. Lawrence, were you planning on attending that?
No,
You are not going to be in the meeting with the state.
I don't plan on attending, no.
Okay. I wasn't going to if it meant that all three of us would be there and we would have to post it as a subcommittee meeting. I wasn't going to go through all that extra hassle. But if Mr. Chair, if you think it would be helpful, I will make an effort to try to be in attendance on that. Where it's a Zoom meeting, it might work out fine. I can perhaps step away from work for that period of time.
I would love some company. I got Rachel, but I'd love another planning board member to be there. And
okay,
I would love to. You could go in my place, Chuck, but 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3 is still a quorum of a board of a subcommittee. 2 out of 3 is a quorum. So,
okay. So it would still have to be posted even if it's not Jim.
I have a concern about it, but
all right, you know what, then I won't because I don't want to overburden anybody on this. I will draft as many possible questions as I can come up with between now and then and fire them off to the chairman, and he will be my advocate.
How difficult is it to post it, I guess, Rachel? And then we could have 3 members there and whatever 3 could make it, whether it's.
well, I don't know as though the state is anticipating this to be a public meeting.
I get you.
Is my concern. Not that I'm sure they wouldn't mind that, but I think they have to deal with a higher up authority than us.
Okay.
So
Will it get all right?
I can ask them to record it.
I was going to ask if you think that'll be recorded, that would be great. And I will. Okay, then fine. I will not try to be in attendance.
Okay, I believe Mike
because of that because of that concern, I certainly respect that.
Okay,
I
I
will,
believe the
I will-
chairman has already requested that the vice select board chairman be there. Again, I think,
It came up as a conversation with the vice chair as we were talking about trying to get with the Board of Selectmen. And he was interested in it, which is how that arose, Rachel. So I don't know that that's a bad thing. But it was a request, and so I haven't done much with that other than say, Rachel, maybe we could invite him if that wasn't gonna violate some boundary. That was a conversation I wanted to have. Any planning board meeting have an issue with the vice chair? I've been in communication with him periodically as it relates to this issue. Just trying to keep people informed as to what we're working on. I advise them all to watch the subcommittee tapes and the planning board tapes so they get a feel of the context of everything we're talking about. If they have questions, they could answer them by that method. Okay. All right. So that is that's the schedule, and maybe if we need to, we can publish that, Rachel, to the group, or we can annotate it and then publish it so everybody's aware of kind of what's in front of us in the next September, October, November timeframe, as we get closer to putting together a package that we'd like to bring to town floor. We spent quite a bit of time. I'll open up short comments. If anybody from the public wants to talk about this, I know we've had a few members attend the subcommittee meeting, and those comments are in the record. But I will, as part of open meeting law, open up to some short comments if there is anybody who wants to ask any questions of the planning board or make a comment.
I
All
have
right. Well,
Leo Immonen has their hand up. I don't know if you can see the hands up, or do you
I
want?
can't really easily. I'm on one screen, so go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
Noonan.
Okay, Mr. Immonen, my name is Leo Immonen. I live at 650 East Street. I like the discussion you've had about potential sites near the Franklin line on Route 140 and near Plainville near Route 1A. Those seem to be very reasonable type sites. However, I agree with a few members of the planning board who oppose the idea of Route 1. To me, we spent some considerable time a few years ago to go ahead and rezone Route 1 North, Route 1 South, to figure that would be a primary commercial area. To now go ahead and place a residential overlay on that district seems contrary to the results that we had several years ago. And besides the fact, safety issues. So I don't like any of the sites on Route 1. You, Mr. Chair, respectfully,
Yes.
commented on the 80 Washington Street versus the former Snow property. I happen to disagree with your points. You made the point that the East Street property was more pristine than the Washington Street. 80 Washington Street actually is a forested area, just like 80, like the former Snow property. So they're both in terms of the same quality. I also think if we're going ahead and do a residential, it turns out the East Street property is in fact the only property under consideration that is currently zoned residential. So to me, that should be perhaps our first consideration, try to put residential overlay in a residential district. Because when we go ahead and put a residential overlay in business and commercial ones, we're potentially losing tax revenue because we have a split tax rate in town and we end up having higher taxes for commercial and business senses. So to go ahead and take that away and make it residential, we're losing something in terms of our tax dollars. Also, in terms of if you have dense development, a lot of residential, you're gonna have a lot of on and off traffic. That's why I oppose Route 1. Whereas Route 140 is well suited to it. It's a 2-lane highway with ample breakdown lanes in both directions. It is one that handles a lot of traffic, but can handle it well. In fact, I think Route 140 in that part perhaps handles better than 140 by the Franklin line or 1A by the Plainville line. It is a pretty good setup. And I realize, Mr. Chair, that you would really like to have a lot of smaller groups to go ahead and stretch out the development. My sense, because of the constraints, I think it might be better to look at 2 or 3 sites of maybe 25-25 or maybe 40-20-20 or something like that. To me, individually, I would like to see affordable housing built. I know that's not the sentiment of many people in town. They don't want to change the character and so forth. And I accept that that's their feeling. But personally, I know affordable housing is necessary. My grandson has been trying to find a place to live in the Boston area, and the rates are just crazy, crazy, crazy. And so I've seen that personal experience. But in general, you see in the newspapers all the time about we have a housing shortage, and it is true. And to me, it's appropriate for us to accept the responsibility in the town of Wrentham to shoulder part of that responsibility. I can understand limiting the amount of growth, but I don't think we should stop it entirely. So I appreciate your efforts, but I would really don't like the number 2 choice being Washington Street. I'd much rather see more consolidation of the units at the other 2 places, and perhaps maybe just two units, one zone there and one in the other one. And I suspect the state's going to frown upon putting a zoning boundary right through a zoning district. I suspect there's going to be extra costs for the town because now we have to legally go ahead and define where that zone is, and perhaps get surveyors in there, get markers, and make a very complex zoning statement. And also having many smaller districts, we have a short window. We only have 3 months to town meeting, and to go ahead and complicate it by having too many smaller pieces, I think is making it difficult for us to have a sound strategy. So maybe I spoke for more than a few minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Appreciate that. Do you see any other hands, Rachel? Otherwise, we'll continue this meeting to the
I'll give it a 1, 2, 3. I see none.
all right. The subcommittee for next week is being posted. We don't have to do anything with that today, correct?
Correct.
And so we just need to continue this public hearing until our next meeting on, what is it, September 4th?
Yes.
Do we have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
A motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, Mr. Boissy,
Aye.
Mr. English,
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence,
Aye.
Mr. Maloney,
Aye.
Mr. Orban,
Aye.
Mr. Woodhams,
Aye.
Mike McKnight, aye. 7 in favor, no one opposed. Motion carries.